Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of UKEduStories. My name is UKEduStories, and my co-host is Mark Anderson, and we're joined by two very distinguished senior leaders. I have to add that in there, fellow women editors, who'll be sharing their tips, advice, and experiences regarding time management and how we can actually do that within education. But before we actually meet our two guests this week, how's your week been, Mark?
Yeah, I've had a great week, thank you, Bookie. I've got some really lovely bits of work coming up, so I've been doing some preparations for that. Although I have to say the irony of viewers, welcome to the show, everybody. I'll just share a little secret. Bookie might not be happy about, so sorry in advance, Bookie. But
Okay.
10 minutes before we're due to go live, and I get a message from Bookie saying, "I'm so sorry, I've lost track of time." And she hadn't come into the studio. I was like, where is she? Oh, my goodness. But no, great week. I'm doing a fantastic bit of work with the Israeli embassy in London. So doing a webinar with them, talking about what things have been learned around the use of technology in both Israel and the United Kingdom, looking for sort of similarities. And I already know there's going to be plenty of things we've got lots in common. Education is a force for good, isn't it? And there's loads that unites us rather than divides us on that front. So I'm really excited to be doing that. I've got a 2-day Deputy Head Teachers Conference next week with IAPS. So I'm doing a lot of preparation with that. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the likes of Jill Berry at that event and Kat Kinshaw and a whole bunch of other amazing people sharing at that event. Loads and loads and loads of stuff. But enough of me, Bookie. How's your week been so far?
It's been a good week, but busy. Started off by a very nice weekend where I actually slept. Normally I do lots of different things, but I slept, and it's amazing how much of a difference that makes to your well-being. But it's been really good. So I did my 2 days in school and just still focusing on the curriculum and making sure that with regards to, I don't like to use the word lost learning, but to just making sure that, you know, our curriculum going forward is the most appropriate for the students in my special school. But I've also been busy with other things outside. So outside of, you know, school. So myself, Teresa Hoyle, Frederick, I'm so sorry if you're watching this, I've forgotten your surname, and Kimberly Evan. So we are part of an editorial team that are going to, but this basically signed a book contract on wellbeing. So there's going to be more details shared in that regard. And today was the first day in which I did some preparation and rehearsals for the EdTech Summit that's taking place next week, Wednesday and Thursday. And anyone who's actually interested in that, we can share details later on because there's still opportunities to sign up. So yeah, quite an interesting and busy week.
Oh, that's great to hear you're involved in all these different things, Bookie. Well done.
Thank you.
So welcome to the show, everybody. Tonight's focus is, and so we're very, very pleased to have two very distinguished guests joining us this evening, published authors and some fantastic experiences to be shared from our guests this evening as well. Our focus on the show this evening is exploring time management and how to do it in education. And it's one of those things, there's never enough hours in a day. You know, we often hear about people wanting an extra day in the week to fit all these things, all the stuff in. And I know you all have your opinions and your perspectives. Here's the flyer for this evening's episode. So as you can see, our guests are Karen, Giles and Sarah Mullin, but there's never enough time in the day to get through everything that needs to be done, is there, Bookie? There's always something, teaching's one of those jobs, but there's always something else you could be doing, isn't there?
Absolutely. It's true. It's never ending. So yeah, I think it'll be good to hear how our guests actually manage time, and hopefully, you know, we have lots of suggestions, tips and guidance that could be shared. But you're right. And I find the experience as well, working part-time in a school, it seems as though that there's even more to juggle to make sure that I get everything I get, you know, that needs to be done with the 2 days, so that it doesn't actually eat into any of the additional work that I do for the consultancy or coaching. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, that's something I'm really keen to sort of dig into with both yourself and Sarah, because Sarah's part-time as well, as I understand it. And so, you know, lots of colleagues of mine in the past who've worked part-time, you know, and one of my old colleagues, Jim Smith, was part-time. But even though he was part-time, he was still working on his days off. And so how can we actually manage our time so that if we are part-time, we can actually, you know, not work on those days when we're not actually being paid for it as well?
Very true.
And with such a topical subject this evening. As always, ladies and gentlemen, viewers, guests, audience, if you want to send through some questions, please do so. If you're watching on Periscope or if you're watching on YouTube, it doesn't matter how you're joining us this evening, please do join in, ask your questions. We'll be happy to pose those to our guests. And if Bookie and I can add anything extra into that, then we're very happy to. But please do just say hello as well in the chats. It's always nice for us to know that we're not just talking to ourselves. It isn't an echo chamber.
It will never be.
I'll stop that. So please do jump in, say hello, let us know how your week's been. And if you've got any questions around time management, then please do ping those through to us. As I say, Bookie and I are always very happy to take questions from our audience. So with no further ado, shall we bring our guests in? We've talked enough about Bookie ourselves. Okay, so the first guest I'd like to bring in is Karen Giles. So welcome to the show, Karen. And our next guest this evening is Mrs. Sarah Mullin. Welcome to the show, both of you. How are you both?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me today.
Thank you for agreeing to come on, I just have to say.
You're very, very welcome, both of you. Just to get things up and running, both of you, could you both, we obviously introduced you a little bit, but could you both introduce yourselves to our audience and explain the role you have in the context you work in? And can I pose that question to you first, please, Sarah?
Sure. Well, I'm a part-time deputy head. So after I had my third child, I returned as a deputy head 3 days a week. And I work in a school for children from 6 months old, nursery, right through to 18 years old. I'm mostly in the secondary school part of it. I'm also doing a doctorate in education, and I obviously been a mum of 3 as well. So I had to go part-time to try and juggle all those responsibilities.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Okay. Yes. Well done to you, though, I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Sarah. And how about yourself, Karen?
So I'm a primary head teacher, doing this for nearly 20 years. College teacher, 30 odd, so I'm going to be very old school today. My school's in Wembley. It's a very large primary school, so it's what we'd call a Titan primary school, 930 children, 143 members of staff. And so you can imagine how strategic that needs to be, but also how busy it will be as well. I also chair a trust, which is the Inspire Partnership Board of Trustees, 9 schools in 3 different hubs. And there's a pattern here that I'm very interested in leadership in terms of the systemic leadership. I get involved in things outside. That's probably how Bookie and I first met. Lots of different things. And I also get involved in other boards. So there's Education and Employers, the Varkey Foundation, just a number of organisations where I'm really interested in working at a strategic level, as well as every single thing that catches my eye, like Bookie saying, would you like to come on this? I'm like, yes, please, thank you. So I'm glad to be working today. So again, thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. And wow, again, as well, with all that you do.
So, Bookie, are you ready to move on to the first?
Yes, I'd like
question?
Yes. So my first question to you both, and I will start with addressing it to Karen first and Sarah, if I may. Now, I can appreciate that no 2 days are ever the same, but can you just describe to us and our audience, what's a typical day like for you? Starting with Karen, please.
As you said, we don't really have typical days, and that's why we love it. It's, it's eclectic, it's addictive, and so that's why we do what we do. So somebody probably gets in around about 8 o'clock. I'd rather work later, and I'll ring the school bell. I'll go through some emails, but what tends to happen with me is that I get hijacked by a number of emails. I get hijacked by a number of people coming to see me. I operate an open door policy. And so that means I have to be relatively reactive, but at the same time still ensure that I book people in. I will, of course, still do a whole school assembly via Zoom these days. I will meet with my senior leadership team. I have 5 associate head teachers who they run the school beautifully. in terms of mini schools. I will meet with other teams. So for instance, it would be the school business management team. I will meet with parents now and again, just in case, you know, they just really need to see somebody immediately. I don't really want to fob them off and give them an appointment too far ahead. I'll see children. I'll go into the dining hall at lunchtime, get some lunch and get to see the children. So a typical day for me will also have anything that you could possibly think of. It might be meeting with an external provider. We're looking to move to maybe bringing school meals in-house. Anything that you can think of. And I think what we quite often say is you couldn't make it.
Yeah, I can believe that. Thank you, Karen. Can I just ask an additional question? You said that you start generally at 8 o'clock. What time do you typically tend to leave the school site?
I'm glad you asked me that, because I would normally work until at school. And then since COVID arrived, I'm really trying to minimize the number of people in the building at any given time, because the rest of the country may be on lockdown, but teachers are still, schools are still, you know, adults are still there. So I'm trying to ensure that I lead by example by asking staff to leave by 4:30 on some days and by 5 o'clock on some other days, because I just want to minimize the number of people and also reduce the rate of infection within school. So at the moment, sometimes I will leave a little earlier. It might be around about, say, 4:35, but it doesn't mean to say that I wouldn't then go home, finish something, and then move on to my evening.
Yes. And
I would say on average a 10-hour day, and that wouldn't include things like this, governors meetings, trustee meetings, and so on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Karen. And Sarah, to you, same question, but and also bear in mind the fact that you work part-time. So which days are you actually on the school site, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm typically in a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but there's a little bit of flexibility. If there's something happening that week and I wanted to come in later in the week, I could shift my days if I wanted to. But at the moment, it's been Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So my days, actually, I feel like I've done a full day's work before I've even got in the car to get to school, because I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a just turned 2-year-old. So getting them ready for school, making sure they're prepared for learning as well, and traveling into school. And then my job starts, especially now with COVID and keeping a COVID secure school, would start with greeting children as they come into school and checking their temperature with a team of health and safety maintenance team, just dealing with issues as they arrive at the school gate. If there's a child that's perhaps a little bit nervous, a little bit set, sometimes it can be the parents as well. And I find that's such a good time to iron out any issues before they escalate. So if there's a parent who wants a quick chat, sometimes just a friendly face and a don't worry, I'll make sure she's fine. Or it could be somebody coming in with a badge and saying happy birthday to them in the morning. That welcoming smile could just really change the how the day turns out. And then as the day goes on, so I teach GCSE and A-level class as well. And we've had with staff who've been self-isolating or who've been off from a general illness, I've been covering lessons as well. I think that's really, really important, is I would always just never do anything I wouldn't ask my staff to do. So it's getting involved there. And as well. So I probably spend about 2 hours a day on staggered break duties, lunch duties, out walking the field, checking that the children are okay. Walking the corridors as well, just to have a quick look at what's going on around the school building. And that's before I've even tackled the to-do list for the day. So I can come in and think, right, I've got this and this to do today, and I've got this hour here and I've got this hour here. Rarely does that ever happen. And at the moment, it's very much having, as Karen was saying, having that open door. Staff are experiencing all kinds of anxieties at the moment. And I think if a member of staff brings to you a concern, it's really important to address it straight away and work with them. Because people are responding to the situation in all different kinds of ways as well. Just checking on as well. So I'm a deputy DSL at the school, so checking that the DSL is, if you need any support or any help there as well. emails. I mean, emails upon emails all day long. Discussions with the head teacher, with the other deputy heads and assistant heads in the school as well. Busy old day.
Wow. Yeah, busy day. Sorry, Mark, before I hand over to you, can I just ask, because you said, Sarah, before you've even come into school, it feels like you've already had a full day's work. What time would your day start then in regards to your 3 kids?
Probably about 8:10. It's
Okay.
much later now at the moment because I don't want my children going into a morning care club. I try and make sure that they are just going straight into school, just again to avoid and minimise any risk of infection. And I've got a great relationship with my head teacher that that relationship's allowed, and I'm allowed to do that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Over to you, Mark.
Brilliant, thank you ever so much, Bookie. I'm keen to find out. I mean, obviously, you've already sort of shared how many plates you're spinning and how busy your days are. I'm interested to sort of find out how you've sort of learned and picked up your sort of time management tips over the years. Have either of you, I'll ask you first, Sarah, and then come to you, Karen. Have either of you actually ever received any training or guidance to help you manage your time effectively? And if you have, could you share a little bit about that? And if you haven't, could you share a little bit about how you've sort of developed your time management skills during your sort of time in your career, please? So Sarah first, then Karen, please.
Interestingly, I haven't actually received any direct training besides when I was a PDC student, and we would look at time management within the classroom. But through self-directed learning, through my masters and through online courses and things, management of courses I've done, and then I've trained other people to deal with their time management. And I'd say the first thing is always flexible and to forgive yourself a little bit. That to-do list that you have will not always get done that day. And it's about prioritizing which tasks are really important and have to be done. So, for example, if there's a safeguarding case in school, it doesn't matter what else is going on, that has to take priority.
Yes.
Similarly, if a colleague who's extremely upset or if there's been a behavioural incident that you have to deal with, you will have to drop some of the other balls. You can't just say, well, I've scheduled this in my diary. This is what I'm going to get on with this hour. So being flexible is really, really important. And, being with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it's lovely to hear how you sort of develop those things over time as well. Same question to you, Karen, then. Have you had any specific training, or is it something you sort of picked up as you sort of worked through your career? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
My fault. Sorry, I've just unmuted you. Sorry, Karen.
No problem. The most liberating advice that I've received is a previous head teacher that I worked with, and she said that this is an undoable job. And I thought, yeah, of course it is. You sometimes have family members who may say to you, have you finished yet? And you're just thinking, this is a job that will never be finished, but I'm going to have to choose to finish at a particular time to draw a line. In terms of receiving any kind of, I'm sure over the years there's been all sorts of courses, time management, etc. And I remember most recently listening to the audio book of Eat That Frog, which is really quite useful in giving you some tips, an array of tips that you may want to pick and choose from. But I think what's really key is that you have to find something that works for you. I don't think that there's anything that you could say is this is foolproof and the most successful people do it this way, and so therefore you should do it this way. It has to be bespoke, it has to be personal. You have to pick and choose particular things that work with how you work. So I'm very aware that some people are morning people and some people are evening people. Some people need 4 hours sleep and some people need 9 hours sleep. Whatever, some people need the peace of mind before they go to bed. Some people write copious lists. Whatever it is that you have recognized works for you, then that's what you do. So, I mean, I could talk about a couple of things that I do.
Yes, please.
Yes,
Yes, please.
Yeah, please.
So if I was to say the things that work for me, one, which is to have an electronic diary. Even before electronic diaries existed, I had an electronic diary. I do like the idea of whatever I put into it, having an alert on it. And so it means that maybe 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before, or at the times when we had meetings that we traveled to, I could put all of that in, so that would help me to organize and alert me to if I had been distracted by something. I also, and I know that we're not supposed to be promoting any kind of devices at all, but I kind of belong to one kind of device family, which means that I've got reminders on my wrist that coincide with the reminder on my tablet and the reminder on my phone. Yeah. The other thing that I find really, really useful is I now also have, because you kind of still need to make notes and things. And so I now use a paper diary also. So my paper diary will have, maybe at the weekend, I will be able to write alongside some of the things that I have to do. It's a duplicate of what I've got in the diary. I will also write alongside lists of things that need to be done as well as. And the other thing that I also find really, really useful is within my emails, because of course I get 1 million emails a day, and I'm not sure if I'm exaggerating. I will use the flag. So as I'm going through them, I will flag the ones that I just go through them. I flag the ones that I need to go back to, and then I keep them flagged until I've actually either dealt with them or whatever. There are ones that fall off the edge, absolutely, but at least it gives me a fighting chance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for the technology sort of taking some of the strain. It frees your brain up so that your brain doesn't have to think about X, Y, and Z. I think that the color coding and flagging your emails as well is really, really good. That's a really good approach, and sort of working your way through them and clearing them. There are other strategies as well that I've come across. Some of them don't work for me, but I know they work for other people. Like inbox zero, for example, is an approach to take with your emails. Again, like you, I don't think I could ever get to zero. So
exactly.
that's not an approach that works for me. But what you're saying there about, again, consistency, and I'm guessing you were talking about an ecosystem which involves some fruit there with the watch and the phone and things. But equally, that other ecosystem, which Bookie's a big fan of, you can do similar things there. And what's lovely when you do get yourself into one of those ecosystems, actually, is that everything sort of sings to each other, doesn't it?
Yes.
And I think that's the key point to sort of take from what you shared there, Karen, because in a Bananarama world, it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. And so by being consistent in how you choose to do those things, whether it is Google or Apple, sorry, I'm being brave and mentioning the names, but so long as you've got that consistency, it can be super helpful. So yeah, no, great responses. Thank you so much for sharing those. Bookie, over to you for the next question.
Okay, so procrastinations, we've actually touched upon it a little bit. What mechanisms do you have in place to minimize the possibilities or to just minimize procrastination? So if you start with Sarah and then Karen.
You okay there, Sarah? Ah, there we go.
Hello. I think with the nature of my job, there's not. Hello. The nature of my sort of responsibilities are that not much of it you can procrastinate on, because somebody's waiting for a response, or somebody, a lot of the jobs need to be done quite urgently. There are some obviously longer term tasks that you can put aside and work on. But I think for me, it's kind of recognizing and respecting that people will have different working patterns. So for me, I have to work, and I enjoy working late into the evening. But then I wouldn't expect other people to be working at that time or to be responding to my work. But it's what works best for me. So some people might work great in the mornings, but the mornings are out for me because I'm getting 3 little children ready for school. The most procrastination, I'd say, is with some of my other studies. I'd say I'm doing a doctorate at the moment and things as well. And you just have to prioritize really what's urgent and high priority, what's less urgent and can wait a little bit longer as well. I think that's what really kind of helps me there. But a lot of it, people would be you also respecting other people's workload as well. So that somebody's relying on you, and as a leader, you want to alleviate any workload stress or any pressure for the people in your team.
Yeah, yeah, spot on. Yeah, totally understand as well. You don't want to be a blocker, basically, and causing additional anxiety, stress, or workload in that regard. So, yeah, thank you, Karen. What do you have in place to minimize the possibilities or minimize any procrastination?
So I've been told that procrastination is the thief of time. I think we can all agree on that. And for me, it's not so much the procrastination. I think I procrastinate if I've got a particular task that needs a degree of concentration or some information. And because I'm constantly interrupted, I procrastinate over that task. And so I have to leave it to a particular time where I have less or fewer interruptions. So that would either be at the end of the day, the very end of the day, in terms of later towards the late afternoon, early evening, if I'm at school. But also now what I'm trying to do is to encourage my associate head teachers, also the leadership team, the admin team, to work from home 1 day a week. And those tasks that actually need that degree of concentration, the best time to do them is on that particular day. I think it's also about, I flit a lot. So I don't know if this comes from being at school as a child and being told something about, easily distracted.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, remember that one? Easily distracted. So it's not that I'm distracted, it's just that I think of things, and in the moment, I flip to that thing, then to that thing, then to that thing. And so that's another kind of form of procrastination, that multitasking as well, which means sometimes you're not doing, sometimes it works and it's fantastic, but sometimes it doesn't work. So
Yeah.
I think if it was pure procrastination, I could answer in a particular way, but it's the procrastination, the flitting, and the constant interruptions. And so just trying to find a way in which you have a system that works for you.
Yeah, I hear that as well. With the constant interruptions, what I used to always try and do in a school site, it's not now, is find a really quiet place where I know that I cannot be found and or interrupted. And I understand what you mean about the flitting as well. I tend to have a notepad or my mobile. I'm constantly on it. So I use Google Keep to keep a log of things, or Trello's absolutely fantastic. So it's out of my mind and on something, so I can actually come back to and concentrate, because I tend to find, multitasking does not work for me, and I end up doing very little at the end of a day. So that's what I've actually found works for me. But yeah, thank you very much. Over to you, Mark, for the next question.
Yeah, brilliant, Bucky. Thank you. Following up from that, a question just for you, Karen. I'm going to try and get through all the questions if we can this evening. Following on from what you were sharing there, you shared some great sort of hints and tips and ways in which you sort of help prioritize different tasks and stuff. But have you got any methods that you use to help you reduce task completion times?
I don't think I do. Because
Okay.
if you think about it, a task is a task and it needs to be completed in a particular way. So I haven't found a way in which I can do it quickly and then move on. I think it's the concentrating on it for a particular period of time, being able to dedicate a period of time for that thing, do that thing, then move on. Okay. That is the only way in which it, something that there's a letter that I had to write for about a week. I only wrote it yesterday when I was working from home. Because and it took me no time at all, but actually I had the time to focus directly on that. So I think it is about just having some focused time on particular things.
Okay.
So following on from that, then it sounds like linked to other things you've shared as well, really, that your recommendation is to sort of prioritize tasks and know when the best time of day is to do those tasks, so that you can then do them in a time where you're not going to be distracted, so you can focus on them. So the tasks which will need your singular focus, for example, you can block those in for times later in the day when you're less likely to get distracted, and managing your time in that kind of a way. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Karen. Over to you, Bucky. Next question.
Yes, so Sarah, with the different things that you juggle, I have to say I'm in awe of what you do, by the way. How do you, when you're overwhelmed though, sometimes that can actually, you can't see the wood for the trees. How do you manage this, minimizing your time management, or having a negative effect on your time management?
again, I think it's what Karen was saying, but the prioritise is really important. Look at the things that have a shorter deadline or are the most urgent and make sure that those get done first. I also think it's really important to look at what you're completing, if it can be used elsewhere. So, for example, if you're preparing a report for the governors, could that information be used in academic assignment that you're maybe doing outside of school? Could it be used in a newsletter that's going home to parents, tweaked in a little way, perhaps? Could it be used as a model if you're coaching and mentoring a colleague who's aspiring to school leadership, for example? So looking to try and make the most of that singular task that you're going to do. I think it's as well is knowing that when good has to be good enough sometimes.
Yes.
So there will be, there will be tasks that will require very specific things. But I will sometimes say, for example, in my emails, I will say in advance, I have got so many emails to get through this afternoon. My responses are going to be short. There's going to be no dear whoever. There's going to be no from. It's going to be between 5 minutes. So it might be one-word responses, and I'll say this is it's not personal. It's just to get through that workload. Sometimes it might be as even the like function on the Outlook messages, just to acknowledge receipt of that email as well. I think as well, what's really good is stopping the reply all system, so making sure that if somebody's emailing, that encouraging an ethos where people are emailing the person that it's directed to. Because you could, if you're copied into every email, you do have to check so you're not missing something. So it's setting up those kind of cultures to reduce workload.
Yeah, I love what you said about good enough. Satisficy, I think, is a fantastic word, and it's true. It's recognizing when good enough is good enough. And I thought I particularly like what you said about the fact that explaining the expectations about how you might respond in emails, because I tend to, because I want to make sure I'm polite, spend ages crafting this email that maybe like a single word or a sentence would actually do. But it's great that you actually put the context out there so staff recognize you're under pressure, but you're still acknowledging the and responding to emails. So thank you for that. Mark, next question.
Yeah,
sorry.
Thank you. So thank you.
I'm hearing feedback. Oh, sorry, Sarah.
No, just one little thing. I think we're all very similar in this respect. You know the saying, if you want something done, ask a busy person. And I think that's probably true for a lot of us, that we're so used to working at this pace that it's almost the norm for us. So we perhaps are quite efficient in what we do. We know what we're doing. And when we do make time to focus on a particular task or activity that needs to be completed, we just tend to get the job done and get the job done well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. I like that. Maybe I might try that with you next time, Mark. Ask you to do something when you're busy. See how you respond. Okay,
thank you for that, Sarah. And it's interesting, you were talking about the sort of the strategies you use, and I think having a whole school approach to email etiquette is super important. It sort of leads me on to my next question, which I'll ask both of you this time about. But we've already heard some examples from Bookie with Google Keep and using Trello. You've talked a little bit, Sarah, then about how you sort of manage the expectations by sort of ticking the box and things. Sarah Hazel who's viewing, has commented that putting a smiley face can actually help messages to seem less abrupt, and these sorts of things. And lots of schools are actually starting to work with alternative tools where it's sort of more messaging service type tools. So Slack, for example, is something that I'm seeing being used increasingly in schools, where you don't have to go for the sort of the formalities, I guess, of like, your salutations, your complimentary closes, all that sort of thing. It's much more acceptable to be brief in your messages and pointed, and it works in a much more sort of chatty kind of a way in those different ecosystems. But the question I want to ask both of you, please, and I'll ask Karen first and then to you, Sarah, next, is are there any particular productivity tools, technology or other, that you use? And if there are any, could you explain what makes them so useful?
Mm-hmm.
I can't, apart from the ones that I'd mentioned before, the fruity ones.
Yeah, the fruity ones. Feel free to mention them. That's absolutely fine.
No. Apart from that, as I said, that whole thing of everything syncing, that helps. We use WhatsApp. We're using, I think what's really interesting overall is about communication generally now. Mm-hmm. So because of where we are, COVID, it's meant that communication has just been a little bit shifted from that face-to-face, from going to see somebody, from having a conversation that might squash something that would normally be, could be a little bit contentious. So now people are resorting to using email maybe a little bit more, or maybe Zoom, etc. Whatever it is, it's shifting the way in which we're communicating, which can sometimes cause a little bit more of an issue, because the tone in an email is different to just going to check in with somebody. So I would really want us to be thinking about how, in our ways in which we're trying to manage our times and trying to be time efficient and trying to actually people first. However you can socially distance yourself from somebody, but yet still have a face-to-face conversation, mask, visor, whatever it is that you want to use, so that we don't lose. Because I know that when I've had particular issues at school around miscommunication, maybe a little bit of kind of conflict, it has, I think, because we've shifted the ways in which we've been communicating over the past few months.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. You mentioned that, Karen. Communication is something which has been, and particularly communication through virtual means, has been something that schools have had to get a real grasp and grip on, and not just between colleagues. The sort of little corridor conversations you have, the bumping into people. Oh, I need to, and all those little things have just gone in so many ways for so many schools, particularly when we were, having to go for the whole remote learning thing. So yeah, it has been a massive shift. How about yourself, Sarah? What are your sort of thoughts on productivity tools and things that you might sort of use to help you? You mentioned the stuff in Outlook before. You got any other recommendations?
Interestingly, I've gone a little bit older school and I love the voice note now. So before you'd be crafting a text message and you'd be adding in your emojis or you'd be emailing somebody, there's nothing more powerful, as Karen was saying, than hearing the intonation, hearing the excitement, hearing the passion that comes across in a voice note, or picking up the phone and having a very quick conversation, because it can iron out any issues there and then. It can be quite supportive as well. I think it's those human emotions, those human connections that have been missing. So in a way, technology is fantastic and absolutely allows us to connect with colleagues now, nationally and internationally as well. But there's nothing more powerful than hearing somebody's voice.
Yeah, no, I'd completely agree. And in fact, one of the first instances of us communicating together was actually on the phone, wasn't it? It was much easier for you and I, Sarah, to have that conversation on the phone, and we'll go into the content of that conversation. But you're absolutely right. And if I just sort of use Bookie and myself, we use WhatsApp primarily for we do email sometimes, but I would say about 950 times out of 1,000, it's a little audio message backwards and forwards to each other, because it's quick, it's immediate. And just like we've seen a real growth in verbal feedback and recording audio feedback for our learners, actually just using the voice for the reasons you mentioned as well, the intonation, the excitement, and all those different things, it's a great way of doing those things. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I couldn't agree more, Sarah. Thank you very much. Bookie, over to you for the next question.
Okay, so this question I think might be a little bit of a toughie, and I'll start with you, Karen, if I may first. Are there any time management myths that you feel need to be debunked?
So I think that there's this, this whole lists and making sure you tick things off. And I think the myth of that is that people first, and I think I might have mentioned it before. I have this thing about everybody is somebody's child.
Yeah.
And so it's those times when people come to see you and they always start with, "Are you busy?" And you can sarcastically roll your eyes and say, "Whoa," but you don't, because it's people first, and say, "No, it's fine, come and talk to me." Because the myth of you putting somebody off and carrying on with your tasks means that what you've just missed out on squashing is now going to fester and become a bigger problem, and you wish you'd intercepted it at the time when you had that first opportunity.
Thank you. Yes, and I agree with the principle about people first. Yes, and I think also it that leads to what I've seen some effective school leaders do, in the fact that they spend their time at school interacting with people and do some of the, like the leadership responsibilities outside of at school hours, when they're by themselves. So I think that links to that. So Sarah, what are your thoughts with regards to any time management myths that you feel should be debunked?
I'm going to say less of a myth and more of perhaps a perception or a habit that people have. And I think it's when a person is efficient and does complete their work well and on time, the idea or the notion of always relying on that person to perhaps take on other responsibilities purely because they can do it well. And similarly, then other colleagues perhaps not having the work done because they maybe won't produce it at the deadline. And I think it's not so much a myth, but it's perhaps a bad habit we can all fall into sometimes, where we unknowingly maybe take advantage of somebody's hard-working ethic and efficiency. So I think that's something that we really should be wary of and conscious of, in education.
Yeah, really good point, because you see that happen time and time again, to the point that this whole person just they can't function, they're no longer efficient. So yeah, very good point there. Over to you, Mark.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much. I'll jump to you first, Karen, with this question, if that's okay. How do you obviously teaching is a very, very busy job. We've alluded to the fact that there's always something extra we could be doing and things we can move on. But how, in your role, do you ensure that your colleagues, other SLT, middle managers, teachers, are committed to deadlines and meet those deadlines? Have you got any strategies you could share about how you go about achieving that? And after you've answered, I'll come over to you and ask the same question, Sarah.
Yeah, I think that it's about the strategic organization that you have at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the week, the end of the week. So we have 2 short leadership team meetings a week. They're an hour each, on roughly, depending on how raucous one of them will get. Friday afternoon, eating too much sugar, if you're going. But it's about being able to have a look at our diaries on a Friday for the following week. So that's what we call the operational leadership team meeting. It means then that we can preempt any of the issues that might come up. Because what you're doing is, sometimes when you're doing things last minute, you're setting people up to fail. So we try to have that kind of meeting, but also at the beginning of the year, just lots of things that will mean that people can have those things in their diaries. They know that those are, any deadline you have is not just your deadline. It's going to have a knock-on effect, and within a large organization, making that really clear. Doesn't matter if somebody doesn't meet their deadline. It just means that if they can just be courteous and give people notice that they won't be able to meet that deadline, and could that be extended? So again, no blame, no shame culture and ethos, where it's okay. We try to be as organized as possible, but at the same time, it is okay for someone to recognize that courtesy and give people fair warning.
That's a very mindful approach, and just pulling on my own experiences from teaching over 2 decades. I've had experience of schools where I've worked in where it's been like that, and the courteous thing and trying to manage your time, and I've been given my deadlines at the start of the year. I know when things are due, all those sorts of things. But I've had the other experience as well, and it's such it can be so toxic in terms of the culture, and can have such negative impacts and repercussions on your productivity and your anxiety and all these different things as well. So kudos to you, first of all, for having that approach in your school, obviously, Karen, but thank you for sharing that advice as well. That's really helpful and timely. How about yourself, Sarah?
I think I would look to it's having a shared vision and a shared goal, and really seeing the value in each particular task. So if I take a task as an example, having if seeing what the impact will be on learners, on the school, and on the individual as well, I think it's really important, because then you're emotionally and career-wise, you're invested in that task. I think it's also really important to have leadership at all levels as well, to give people a bit of autonomy and a bit of room to grow. Because I think as leaders, you know, we may have climbed up the ladder, and it's so important that we're giving a hand down and helping the next person back up as well. So it's providing those opportunities, and really also as well about communication. I know we've talked about this a lot this evening, but it's also about how you ask somebody to do something. So if it's put upon them, or if it's inviting them, or talking it through with them and giving them sort of shared ownership, then when the task is complete, they can rejoice and celebrate in the success of that intervention or task, or whatever it might have been. Similarly, if throughout the process there's been a problem, there's been an issue or a hiccup along the way, working alongside the colleague by having perhaps interventions or a change of path, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true there. And what's lovely is, throughout your various responses, I'm going back to one of the responses you made right at the very beginning. It was talking about doing things that doing stuff that you would want everyone to be prepared to do. So like jumping in, doing a cover letter, all those sort of things. And it goes to that old adage about not just talking the talk, but walking the walk as well, doesn't it? It's really lovely to hear that shining through in your response. Thank you so much, Sarah. Bookie, I know it's your turn to ask a question, but we've got a question from the audience, and we wanted to bring that in to ask both of you, if that's okay, Bookie.
Yeah.
Sarah Hazel asks, have you found any positives or lessons from your experience of COVID about time management that you can take forward post-COVID? So things that you might not have done previously, you've learned and sort of taken on board and during the sort of lockdown and all the horrible things you've had to experience this year that you might not take forward into the future. And I'll jump to you first, Sarah, if that's okay.
Mine's going to be a personal one. Spending that time at home with the children, my own children, it really makes you value friends and family. And there's that brilliant analogy of having a glass jar full of balls, and some of the balls will bounce back, if you drop them, but some of those balls are made of glass. And I think it's really, time management is sometimes work can take priority over your personal life. And it's so important that we try and establish and maintain those healthy barriers to make sure that we're not dropping any balls, that if we drop them, they just won't ever be the same again. Now, I will admit that's good advice to give, and I give it a lot, but I'll be very honest and say it's very hard to take it. Because, when I'm working late into the night, ironically on a presentation where I'm telling early career teachers to take care of their well-being. So I think it's really, really, it's hard to do. But that's what COVID taught me, that, life is short, family and friends are precious, and, really do manage your work responsibilities and your personal responsibilities well if you can.
Brilliant advice there, Sarah. Thank you very much for sharing that. Karen, did you have anything to add in relation to that on Sarah's question, please?
I think I would definitely reiterate everything that has just been said, but it's also about the opportunities for agile working. And, we've talked about part-time, etc., but actually that agility of working that I've been speaking about in terms of really trying to work from home 1 day a week, really trying to make sure that I am the role model for that with the staff, in terms of admin staff, the leaders, any of the teachers have the opportunity to have their PPA at home, planning, preparation, assessment time, for teachers to be able to have their leadership time at home. If there's anything that they are able to do, leave work and go home and do those things. Obviously, having to make sure that there are, for some people, their home environment is not conducive to them completing work, and they do want to stay at school, and they want to be able to use school as a barrier to say, right, this is my work, and then when I'd stay all the hours that God sends, but then after that, when I go home, then I'm going to protect that time for me and my family. So I think it's about modeling and facilitating the agility or the agile working opportunities, making sure that we are taking care of our well-being within that time. And so I'll give you an example. When I worked from home yesterday, of course, I got up, got all my work done, did everything I was doing. But if it means that you can then either put the washing machine on, so that you're, you know, that's a task that you are then not in having to do it at maybe in the evening or the weekend. You're multitasking. Or does it mean then at lunchtime that, or the time that you've allocated for your lunchtime, you take half an hour to run to the park and run back, you're out in the daylight. So all of those things that are boosting your immune system, making all those things that are part of your self-care, being kind to yourself, for your well-being, connecting with all sorts of things that you need in a time where what I'm noticing is that just below the surface, lots of people are crumbling. And so we have to make sure that not only are we modeling that for ourselves or for very people around that, but we're actually leading by example. There's a certain amount of stamina that is required for the leadership in schools, or stamina is required for just being in schools at the moment. And so therefore building that resilience means that we can take advantage of those agile working opportunities. We're getting our work done, we're getting our priorities right.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. I mean, brilliant.
So much so, and also emphasizing the point about the stamina that's required, because I just think that people tend to forget that, particularly when you have leaders that in a way make it look easy. I just think, as you say, they don't know what's going on beneath the surface in order to make sure you present as you know want to be for your school and your school community. So thank you for making that point. All right, Sarah Hazel shared that as well. And
I'm not going to embarrass Sarah by saying this, and Sarah Mullin this is, but even in our private chats, Sarah's been messaging saying, Karen, you're incredible, behind the scenes in our little chat here as well. This is such great advice and just shows strong leadership from both of you. Thank you for your insights so far. Bookie, it's you. I jumped in with a naughty extra question.
That good. Timely, but not a problem at all, Mark. So this one's slightly off piece because it's not quite part of the list preset questions, but it links to what we just shared. How do you put boundaries in place? And I know that you touched upon it just now, Karen, to ensure that you have the time to do what you want to do for your own personal life during weekends and particularly holidays, because I know a lot of people who they tend to, drag themselves maybe to the weekend, but there may be some things that actually bleed into it. So they don't really get a break or disconnect from school, and a similar thing that actually happens in the holidays as well. So what boundaries do you put in place for yourselves that enable you to carve out some time for yourself or your family or however you want to spend it during the weekend and the holidays?
Sorry, Karen.
Sorry.
As I was going to say, to be fair, I have a little bit more time than Sarah. Sarah's got 3 children. She's doing her ED. Is it an ED, is it? Yeah. She's working. I'm in awe because that's amazing. I have one child who's got a beard, so you can know that I don't necessarily have to do all the things that you're doing. I think it's such a good point about having some time to protecting some time. So I think there's a trade-off here. Any time that you've maybe contracted with people, so somebody say you're busy and you say, well, I've got a certain amount of time. I'm trying to learn to time contract. And so if I've then saved myself an extra 15 minutes, that means that extra 15 minutes is my little treat to myself to do whatever the hell I want to. So if I want to sit watching Say Yes to the Dress with breadsticks and butter, then that's up to me. So, say that.
It just shows you're human, Karen. I love it. and saying thank you very much for that, Karen. Same question to you, Sarah.
I think for me, so the first thing I did is switched off the automatic emails on my phone. I will check my phone probably daily, even on my days off. I like to see what. But I just think it really does set a very clear boundary between that you're not always working. And planning to do lovely things as well. So we'll always go on a nice summer holiday. We'll go away to Ireland for the summer, which is in the really remote place where there's hardly even phone reception where we go to. So it's really nice to just switch off. But I think kind of like Karen was saying with Say Yes to the Dress, it's also about having, if you're feeling really stressed or something's happening, just take that break when you need it. So whether that be going around to your friend's house or going to a spa day or whatever it might be, responding to what your body and your mind are telling you to do.
Yeah, such great advice about responding, giving your body, what you need. Yeah, so fantastic. Thank you both.
Yeah,
This is I always say this every week. We learn so much from our guests, but this, I think, time management is one of the key things that pretty much many people struggle with. So, I'm sure they've got a plethora of different ideas and suggestions they can actually try out. So thank you both so much for that. Sorry, Mark.
No, absolutely fine. Just speaking of time management, the shows last an hour and we've only got a few minutes left here at the end of the show. So I'm just going to finish off, if that's all right, Bookie, just by asking one final question. Although, actually, do you want to do the standard sort of final question, Bookie? Did you want to do
I
that?
don't mind. Okay. Yep. Thank you. All right. So I'll have to read it out though. But yeah. So where would you suggest teachers and school leaders could learn more about effective time management strategies? Are there any particular books or educators they could actually get advice from, or podcasts, etc.? So if we start with you, Sarah, first, and then Karen.
I have said it before and I'll say it again. The best resource that we have in our profession is the skills and the experience and advice of one another. So I would say make use of social media, ask people by DM if you don't feel confident online. But I think our profession is full of people who just love to help, support and share ideas. So I've been learning, from Karen and from both of you this evening as I've been going along as well, picking up tips. So I think go out there, find people who are positive, uplifting and motivating, who'll be able to have these discussions with you.
Fantastic. Great advice. Thank you. And Karen, for the last comments.
Thank you. I would say that you have to look within yourself. I think that you have to trust yourself. You know the things that work for you, and you know the things that work for other people. So in terms of, there's the 5 ways to well-being, or the 5 ways to mental health.
Yes.
And one of them, it kind of equates to the fact that you should know yourself. And so, or you know what your triggers are. So I know that I need sleep. Otherwise, it makes it very difficult for me to focus and function. I know that I need my electronic diary, as I've said. I know that I also need pound shop. Hello. I also need to be able to write lists down. The electronic listing doesn't work for me. All the things I know about myself, I know that I need to get certain things out of my head and onto paper before I can then let go. I know that I need all those things that you know about yourself, all those things that you are tried and trusted and work for you. Have faith that those are the best things for you and go forth and use them.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And it's interesting to hear you say that, Karen, because when you said, like yourself, initially I just thought, because I tend to, look at other people and get suggestions, things like that. But yes, you're right in the fact that not, we know what works best for us in our particular context, and really trusting that particular process. And I think because particularly now with, the COVID-19 situation where there's a lot more out there, even more than there was before, sometimes you can feel a little bit inundated or maybe feel obligated to try certain things. But yeah, great reminders. And I think from different ends of the spectrum, it's really useful to hear that. Sorry, Karen, did you want to say something else there?
Just to reiterate again, I know that people recommend Eat That Frog, and I didn't have the time to read the book, but I was doing some housework and listened to it. There's a YouTube book audio version.
Right.
It's free. It's on YouTube. You can be doing stuff and you can be listening to it at the same time. Love an audio book. Multitask like a trooper.
Good, very good point. Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you both so much for all of your sage advice and wisdom shared across the whole of the evening. I know it's been of real use to myself and Bookie and for our audience as well. Just taking one comment, for example, from Amy Flores, sort of showing such brilliant advice. Both of you, thank you very much indeed. And so that just leaves myself and Bookie really to say thank you again, both of you very much for joining us and sharing your advice and wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So we're at the end of the show, but before we move away, I want to Bookie and I want to share about an exciting thing we've got taking place very, very soon indeed. And so if I just go to my share screen option here for a second and jump into this here, and I'm hoping I get the right tab on this. If I choose that and then go share, hopefully I've got the, no, I've managed to choose the wrong one. So I'll do it all over again. Well done. And I like to make sure that as someone who does a lot of work with technology, I do get things wrong myself from time to time.
Accidentally on purpose, yeah.
It's a model that things can go wrong for absolutely everybody, but I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to show my growth mindset and do that. There we go. So we've mentioned it a bit before, but things are moving at a fast pace. Please, please, please do keep the 10th of December free. We are going to be holding our own Teach Meet. It'll be online, which is in keeping with things this calendar year for sure. But we are looking for you to get involved and to share. I've seen lots of people, myself included, saying how we miss an old school Teach Meet. Well, we can't have an old school shindig Teach Meet. Although, Karen, you'll be pleased to hear that I may well get my gold sequin jacket out for this particular event. I do love a bit of a sequin jacket on a Teach Meet. But yep, Thursday, 10th of December, we're going to be having our Teach Meet UKEduStories. Please check out myself and Bookie's Twitter timelines. We'll be sharing the sign-up form there. We'll be looking to run that from a usual sort of Teach Meet time, sort of 5:30, so an earlier slot on that particular day than we would normally have for UKEduStories. But we're looking to get you involved and sharing at this Teach Meet just before Christmas. And as always, with Teach Meets, we've got an exciting keynote that we want to that we're going to share with you very soon. Joining us to sort of kick off proceedings. And then we've already had a few people, friends we've spoken to, who are keen to join us, who've filled in the form already. But very, very keen to hear from everyone and get lots of great teaching, learning, leadership, sharing ideas, coming across and getting involved there. And as always, in a Teach Meet, there'll be lots of fun, laughs, and there'll be some prizes, some competitions across the event, and what have you as well. So please do keep yourself peeled, not literally, obviously, because that wouldn't be good. But keep your eyes peeled for the link to the sign-up form and more details coming from myself and Bookie in the coming days as we build up towards our big event on the 10th of December. So, Bookie, that is the end of the show. Thank you for, as always, all of your hard work in helping me and working with me to produce this. It really is a team effort. Thank you again to Sarah Mullin. You can follow Sarah on Twitter at Mrs. Sarah Mullin. You can follow Karen on Twitter at Ms. Karen Giles. You can follow Bookie at Rondell10_B. And my name is Mark Anderson, and I'm sure you can find me somewhere on social media. So that's all of us done for this evening. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week on another episode of UKEduStories. Thank you for joining us. Take care and be safe, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.